one of the people in the mix and has been on this show before is Republican candidate for governor, Catherine Templeton. Good morning, Catherine.
Good morning. 43 days, 10 hours, 49 minutes, and 50 seconds. 49, 48.
There you go. There you go. Hey, I want to get a little more specific with you, if you don't mind, in regards to what your ideas are. I mean, obviously, early on, we talk in generalities. If you don't mind, I want to take a few moments and get specific about things that I think are important to the next governor of the great state of South Carolina. Catherine, one is economic development. We all argue, and I think you and I would agree, that the private sector is the engine that drives the state and national economy. But government does have a responsibility in putting forth policies and directives and edicts that advance economic growth. Your rationale as governor in regards to what you think your job is to promote economic growth and job creation in the state of South Carolina?
Sure. I think that's a great question because it affects the entire state. And if we don't have prosperity, what's the point? Governor Haley was an elephant hunter. She went out, she recruited business, she sold the state of South Carolina as a state full of wonderful people, skilled people, hardworking people. And I was one of the business people standing behind her, backing up what she was selling. Because I've been from South Carolina my entire generations, and I know she's right. The job of the governor is to not only bring in these huge manufacturers, but also to make sure that we have a great education system, that we bring shop back to high school, so that we have a wonderful workforce, and that our people, South Carolinians, are getting our jobs. Not just that we have them, but we have good ones, that our people are ready to take them, that people from out of state aren't coming in to fill those jobs, that illegals aren't coming in to fill those jobs. And then we have to make sure that our small businesses, because that's 90% of the businesses in the state, that government gets out of their way. And we've never had a governor who has actually run a state agency. I've never run before, so I'm an outsider to all that political self-dealing, but I have been accountable for your dollars, made decisions with them, been accountable for the outcome, been responsible, and shrunk spending while getting government out of the way. And that's what we have to do so that the business sector, the private sector, the small businesses, our citizens can thrive and not have to deal with all that bureaucracy.
When we talk about prosperity and we talk about job creation, I read a lot preparing for this show, and you and I have talked a couple of times about this. We're a deeply divided country. We're divided ideologically. We're divided socioeconomically. One of the great divides that I don't think people carry on enough conversations about, Catherine, is the urban-rural divide, the congregating of people into major metropolitan areas, and the prosperity and advancement in those areas has been has positioned the metropolitan urban areas in a more advantageous spot. South Carolina is still, I would argue, a rural agrarian state. I mean, obviously Boeing and Volvo and some of these other BMW, some of these other wonderful companies that have located to South Carolina, but not necessarily from a farming perspective. But Catherine, how do you sense this urban-rural divide that is all over America? And is it government's role to nurture advancement and prosperity in some of the areas that have been decimated by NAFTA and GATT and TPP and a lot of other trade, the globalization, as you and I talk about? I mean, is there anything a governor of South Carolina can do to offer more hope to those living in rural South Carolina?
Absolutely. First, we have to take care of our own. And, having had a front row seat in Columbia, I've said I can't unsee what I saw in Columbia, but I can undo it. The reason our small towns don't get what they need is because they don't have lobbyists. And people go to Columbia and they get enveloped in that bubble and they forget about the rest of South Carolina. I have spent so much time in small town South Carolina, and we have to make sure that we bring prosperity to all of our rural counties. But let me tell you how it works in Columbia. They incentivize. It's follow the money. You've heard that before. They incentivize behaviors. And what I mean by that I was responsible for a statewide office. And in that office, I asked the people who work there where we should send the most of our resources. Do you know what they told me? Greenville, South Carolina. And I said, tell me why. And they said, well, we're serving so many people in Greenville. Well, of course we were. We had 8 stories of a Taj Mahal in Greenville and all the employees and money you could want. You know how many people we were serving in Jasper County, South Carolina? 0, because we didn't even have a clinic there. And that's the mentality is, send more where there is already success, because we don't want to have to deal with the places where there's not. I had a number of projects and programs while I was working for Governor Haley that put the money in rural counties instead of putting it in these metropolises that have a Boeing, that have a university, have a support structure around them, instead of, let's say, Fairfield, Bamberg. Good gracious, I spent a lot of time in Timmonsville. So the governor has to be the governor of the whole state and make sure there's prosperity, because all boats rise on the high tide.
There's been some criticism, and I kind of was involved in some of this, as to how the last 2 elected governors corresponded and worked with the legislative. We're a very legislatively dominated state. You know that as well as I do. Mark Sanford was a bit obstinate toward the legislature. Nikki Haley got accused of not being willing to work enough with the legislative branch of South Carolina state government. What do you perceive your role as governor of South Carolina in relation to the legislature, the Senate, and the House?
My first governor was Governor Carroll Campbell. That's the one I remember as a young adult. And, he realized that the governor has a seat at the table, but it's the legislator's table. And as long as that is the case, you have to work with the legislature to get anything done. And we're all adults. You don't have to like everybody you do business with or agree with them. In fact, I'd submit most of us have somebody we can think of that we have to get along with, that we may or may not like or agree with. But you have to be an adult, and you have to be a professional, and you have to get work done. And even when you don't, Ken, I've told you this story. I don't know if I've told everybody in Darlington and Florence the story, but I worked with Mike Pitts, plain-spoken representative from Lawrence County, former police officer. You know where you stand with that man. And he and I didn't agree on something. And you never heard about it because we were adults about it. But the next thing I know, he's on television telling his constituents that if Catherine Templeton says we're safe, we're safe. I trust her. And I called him. I said, Mr. Chairman, I didn't know you liked me. And he said, what, darling? I respect you. At least you rattle before you strike. And I think that says a lot.
The Grand Ole Party, the party of which you're seeking the nomination of, I would argue is in the middle of a rebranding. I don't know what it looks like on the other side. The most obvious personality is Donald Trump in rebranding or repositioning of the Republican Party. I listen to John Kasich. I listen to people threaten to leave the Republican Party. What does the Republican Party mean to you? What values do you want to make as its priority? If you are fortunate enough to be the governor, you are the leader of the Republican Party in South Carolina. What do you want that Republican Party's priorities to be?
In South Carolina, conservatives love their mamas and their babies and their guns and their money. And we want somebody to be honest with us. We want somebody to do their best for us and not just them. These politicians go up there, I don't care what party it is, and they take care of each other instead of taking care of us. I want the Republican Party in South Carolina to be the leader in a conservative revolution. We are one of the most conservative states in the nation, and we need a governor who acts like it. I think it's pretty simple. We want somebody who's going to tell us the truth and then do what they say they're going to do. And, I don't think you can ask for more than that. And whatever the Republican Party looks like on the other side, I think the people of the nation and of South Carolina have spoken and said that the Republican Party needs to look like that. It needs to look like, Donald Trump, an outsider who's doing what he said he's going to do. He's backing it up. That's not worried about the bureaucrats and the establishment and what his next job is or what his last job was, but is serving the people.
Interesting. Catherine, I'll give you the last couple of minutes to tell people, you said there's 43 days. I guess there's fewer minutes and fewer seconds now than when we started. I mean, and I'll go on the record, Reb. I mean, proper advice is to stay out of people's races. Let people sort that out. I never was real good at that when I was in politics. I was always not necessarily endorsing someone, but, saying I think this person would be a very good sheriff or this person would be a very good county councilor or city council member. I just never was real good at minding my own business. But I've met Catherine several times, and I found her to be a very thoughtful, competent, conscientious person. And I think governors of South Carolina, the governor of South Carolina needs to understand that there is a balancing act. You are the CEO of the state. You're someone who is in charge of directing the state in a particular direction, of prioritizing, but there has to be a willingness and an acceptance of working with the legislative branch, even when you disagree. And I have found Catherine to be the sort of person that I think could make the sort of balancing act work that I think is very, very difficult. And once again, we'll get closer to the time, and I'll start telling you who I like more so than others. And I like all the people. I mean, I know Yancey McGill real well. Yancey and I are dear friends and have been lifelong friends. Henry ran for governor when I ran for lieutenant governor. Kevin Bryant is the lieutenant governor today. He was in the Senate when I was there. So I know all of these guys and ladies. And from my perspective, I have really found Catherine to be the most engaging, the most informative, and someone who I think the voters of South Carolina should seriously consider. The power of an incumbency changes elections, and McMaster became the incumbent when Nikki Haley left, the state capitol to go to Washington or New York and do her thing. Good for her. I mean, that's being politically ambitious, and things work out her way. But I think our listeners and voters in this area need to really consider and get to know what Catherine has to say, because I think she is a very, very, very conscientious and credible candidate for governor. That's kind of what I've got to say. But, Catherine, I'll get out of the way and let you close by telling people why you believe you are the choice they should make when they go to the ballot box second Tuesday of June.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for what you've just said, Ken, because you've seen it, you sat there, you know what it's like, and that means a lot. And I think your listeners trust you, your good judgment. Here's the bottom line. I can't be bought. Don't need this job, and I'm not running for anything else, never run for anything before. I want to go serve the people of South Carolina. And I've had this unique path where I now have all of the business sense that I need to have as a private business person. I'm a South Carolinian. I'm a mom who cares about the future of our 3 kids and yours. And most importantly, I've had 4 years of on-the-job training, working for Nikki Haley, working with your dollars, and go look at what I did with that. They call me the buzzsaw, which was not meant as a compliment. That was the liberal media being upset because I cut spending, cut tax, cut regulation, cut government, and I want to go do that again. I want to make sure that it's a great day in South Carolina again. And, nobody will be more pure of intent about taking care of the people in this state than I will be.
Catherine, if someone wants to support your campaign, whether it's financially contributing or volunteering, yard signs, I mean, there are a lot of things that go in to building a successful campaign. How can they get in touch with your organization?
Well, a couple things. I'll be at the drive-in at noon, so they can come see me directly, and I'll be at the Florence Republican Women's at 6:30 tonight, or they can go to CatherineTempleton.com. Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. Stay safe and have a great from here to the finish line.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. We'll take a break. We'll be back after the break. Once again, takes Mondays to make Fridays, 843-661-0937.